What's going on, guys? Coach Vic here. Welcome back to another episode of the FBP podcast. In this week's episode, we're going to be talking about slumping. Yes, the dreaded slump, how we get into it, why we get into it, and how to snap out of it. Let's get into it. Okay, guys, so I got a few things to unpack here, so be sure to stay tuned to the end because the last point of this week's episode is going to explain to you how you could actually snap out of it. Like anything, if you understand what is happening when you are quote unquote slumping, then you're going to be able to make adjustments. Same way in your swing. If you don't understand what is happening in your swing, say mechanically, or even if your mental approach is off, if you don't know what is off, how can you turn it back on? Or how can you make the adjustment if you aren't aware of it? So the first step towards anything is becoming aware. And so that's what this episode is going to kind of break down. Is I'm going to give you a few key points that you need to be aware of in order to be able to minimize your slumps or even eliminate your slumps. So number one is the law of large numbers. Okay, this is something that is very important to understand as a hitter and just in general for that matter. The law of large numbers. It basically is, okay, if we take a small sample size, so let's say you start off the season, your first 10 at-bats, which is maybe 2 or 3 games worth of at-bats, and you don't have a hit, right? Well, on paper, you are hitting 0. Your batting average is 0. And if you focus on the batting average being at 0 when you're 0 for 10, you can kind of be like, oh man, I'm slumping. I don't know what to do. I can't get a hit. I'm going to go the whole season. I'm not going to get a hit the whole season at this rate. And it's like, yes, actually that is true. But the fact of the matter is that is very, very unlikely to happen. Okay. So just simply understanding that when you take a small sample size of at-bats and you focus on the average of that small sample, you're not looking at a very accurate number, right? So this is why, again, one of the things that leads to a slump is simply not understanding this law, is that the more at-bats that you get, first off, you're going to get hits, right? Obviously, getting more or less is going to be determined by a lot of things, but you are going to get hits with a larger number of at-bats. Say you go 0 for your first 10. Oh my gosh, I'm hitting 0. I'm hitting 0 on the year. I'm the worst hitter on the team. Maybe you're the only guy without a hit on the team. It kind of sucks, right? But let's just say your next 10, you go 4 for 10. Okay, now you're 4 for 20. Not great, right? But again, it's still a very small sample size. So 4 for 20 is 200. So the next 10 at-bats, you just jumped 200 points from 0 to 200, right? Let's say you went 6 for 10. So you kind of started to heat up a little bit. Now you're hitting 300. You're 6 for 20. You're hitting 300 now. So you see, and that's just within 20 at-bats. So again, focusing on smaller numbers and even just on batting average alone is not a great place to put your focus. So yeah, focusing on batting average. This was one thing that, my dad was a big influence in my life and a huge support system going through my entire career. And we would talk during baseball season. And again, he nor I really knew any better. And we knew that the ultimate goal was to make the major leagues. So we knew the goal was to hit 300, and to hit, 20, 25 home runs in a season. Never ended up happening. Came close a couple seasons, but never happened. And one of the things that he would do and we would talk about on our phone calls after games is my batting average. And we would talk about, if you go 3 for your next 10, which is 300, you're going to be hitting whatever. Let's say you're at 280 right now. If you go 5 for your next 12, you're going to be hitting, 290. And although those were facts, right, he was kind of calculating the numbers out. But what it did is even though he was trying to help me, like he was trying to simplify it for me. Like, hey, well, that's totally doable to go, 5 for your next like 20 or something like that, right? That's going to increase, your average is going to go up or stay the same or whatever, et cetera. You get the idea. But what it did was he was trying to minimize it by saying, well, it's an achievable number. And in that sense, and I think that's why it made sense at the time, because if you break things down and chunk things down into more achievable chunks, it can kind of alleviate some pressure. But I do believe that when you're doing it at a high level, and to just be able to flip a switch and be like, okay, and now 15 at bats, I got to go 5 for 15 or something, or 4 for 15, whatever. If I'm like, say I'm 0 for 6 or I'm 1 for 7 or I'm 2 for 8 or something, now it's like, again, I have to think, well, I need to get hits in the next X amount of at bats, right? And so that becomes the problem, is that once you start to think in your mind that I need to get hits because my batting average is going to go up or down, whatever, like as if it's going to be the end of the world, that's when it puts unnecessary stress and unnecessary pressure. And we know that pressure gets in the way of us performing our best. Okay, so definitely focused, and I've talked about this in other episodes, way better than focusing on batting average is focusing on the process, right? The process keeps you locked into the present. Last week's episode, I talked about this, keeps you in the present moment, right? Our present moment is where we perform our best, where we are loose, we are relaxed, we are flowing, we are reacting to the game as it is happening in this moment. So thinking about outcomes too much is taking you away from the present and therefore affecting what is happening right then and right there. Right. So what would be better to focus on is not your batting average. Focus on hard hit balls. Focus on good quality at bats. Because guess what? Especially when I was in pro ball, you ain't going to hit every ball hard. There's going to be a lot of Judies. You're going to get jammed. You're going to get fisted off the end of the bat. There's going to be a lot, and you're going to need every single one of those hits. And the same goes for every level, really. You need all your hits. Okay. We're not going to ever return a hill. I didn't like that one, and return it. Okay, we're going to get robbed of hits. There's a lot of variables that we cannot control. And so this is kind of one of them, because again, a hard hit ball, I can line out and now it's an out, and I'm not meeting my quota because I just lined out. So it puts that unwanted pressure, makes you frustrated because you're lining out. But again, you can't control that. So what would have been a better approach for my dad and I is that maybe we could have focused on just hit the ball hard that many times, right? Or even if it's, think like 300, hit 300 in hard hit balls, right? And then let the results just fall as they may, because sometimes you're going to not hit the barrel and they're going to be hits anyways. Right. And so I think that would have been a better approach for us, and maybe could have been helpful. And maybe I would have actually hit, a little higher that year with that mindset and approach. The second thing to understand is what I call the 4 seasons of hitting. Okay. And this is something that we have to understand. It's how the entire world and universe works. Everything works on cycles, right? On seasons. Okay. So let's think about the seasons of the year. Okay. We have spring, summer, fall, and winter. So let's just assume that the spring, right? The spring is more cold. Right, that's when baseball starts. It's cold. It starts to warm up. Okay, then we move into summer. The summer is hot. Right. Okay, as the summer starts to wind down, we head into the fall. Okay, in the fall, things as it's cooling down, it goes from hot to warm, and then eventually from warm to cold. And then what follows the fall is the winter, and the winter is cold and wet and dark. Right. So just like the seasons of the year, we will face these same seasons throughout our baseball season as a hitter, and as any player really, but especially as a hitter. Okay, so I've broken it down this way. So spring is cold to warm. Okay, summer's hot, fall is warm and cold, and winter is cold. Okay, you are going to experience this as a hitter. Now, not necessarily in that order. The order is going to be dependent on a lot of things, right? And how long you stay in each of these seasons is going to determine on you, right? And so that's the area that we can improve. But the one thing that we cannot eliminate the seasons. You will face these seasons throughout your season, okay? But it makes sense, okay? And this is just a fact. You have to accept it, just like the weather outside. I mean, yeah, I'm sure there are some people that are pretty pissed off about the weather going on outside. What are you going to do about it? Nothing. But I want you to understand and accept you are going to face all 4 seasons throughout your season. The way I've broken it down, there are 3 seasons that are going to be cold. There's going to be 3 seasons where you could be cold. There's going to be 2 seasons where you can be warm. And there's going to be 1 season where you can be red hot. And I believe that hitting is going to work out in a similar ratio. You're going to be hot far less than you're going to be cold. Right? You're going to be warm less than you're going to be cold, but more than you're going to be hot, if you can stay with me on that. Okay. And so the fluctuation of how we go through the season, like I said, is going to be determined on you. So me, for example, my hots were so friggin' hot that I was as good as anybody when I was hot. But when I was cold, I was as bad as anybody. I mean, it can get ugly. My strikeouts would come in big batches. I would check swing. I would roll over, just really, really poor at-bats and giving up my at-bats when I was cold. Okay. When I was warm, okay, things start to click a little bit. The swings get better. The contact gets a little bit better. I'm not necessarily hot, but I'm competing, and maybe I'm getting a couple hits here and there. Maybe still kind of hitting some ground balls. And again, I was a power hitter, so ground balls I wasn't legging them out. Okay. Then eventually I could get hot. And, maybe I'm hot for a week or a week and a half or 2. I'm referring to professional baseball. So I think the longest, maybe like a full week and a half, I could be just absolutely on a tear. And I hit like 4, 5, even 6 home runs in like a week and a half. I just go off with also like minimal strikeouts, base hits, spraying the ball to the field, line drives, fly balls, home runs, deep fly balls, balls off the wall, ground rule doubles, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, eventually cool down, back to warm, and then eventually cold. My biggest problem was my mental, my attitude, right? I did not handle failure well at all, okay? I had personal stressors in my life that were happening off the field, and those things I would carry onto the field, okay? This is a big reason why I talk so much about the mental, because I was the type of player that had all the physical ability, right? The skill set didn't matter, because I set my own ceiling because my mindset and my attitude was poor, very poor. This is the biggest issue with most players, especially if we're talking about at the professional level, minor league level. Most players have the tools and the skill set to be in the major leagues. They just aren't consistent enough to put it together. Their summers aren't long enough. The late spring and the early falls, not long enough. The winters, early spring, late fall, winters, too long. So we need to be able to spend more time in the summer, more time in late spring, and more time in the early fall. All those warm and hot times, we need to broaden those. But there is no eliminating them. You will hit all season during your baseball season. What do you do with this information? Accept it. Accept it as fact. And so what this does is it takes the pressure off of you. Winter is coming. Okay? It's only a matter of time. Now, it doesn't mean to be fearful of it, but you just know. When you're hot, you're not going to stay hot all year long. It's ridiculous. And it was ridiculous for me to think it, because when I was hot, and I was cooling down, I used to get pissed off and get upset, thinking that like I'm just going to go on a tear and hit 4 home runs every week for the rest of the season. And that's just not going to happen. Right? I could have done better. I could have gave myself a pretty good chance to do that, but it's not as likely to happen. Right? So just accepting it as fact will allow you to expand the warm and hot and minimize the cold. Accept it as fact. It takes the pressure off. Okay, so next up, we're kind of going to break down a little bit more of what is actually happening during a slump. Okay, now think about when you are slumping. What are you thinking about? Like, are you telling yourself like I can't hit this guy? I suck right now. Like, man, I'm 0 for 4, I'm 0 for 5. I'm 1 for my last 10. Man, I got to get a hit here. Right? More than likely, if you're anything like me and like any other ball player I've ever talked to, you're going to say similar things. You're going to be thinking similar things and saying similar things to yourself. How do you feel when you are saying those things? Does it make you feel loose and relaxed and confident? No. You're going to be feeling tight, tense, nervous, anxious. Okay? Those feelings, right, are going to affect how you act, how you move, how you make decisions. So this is called the think, feel, act loop. If we think a thought, we feel there's a physiological response in the body. What we feel in the body is going to affect how we act, how we move, decisions we make. Those decisions that we make can lead to an outcome. The outcome can reinforce the thought. So we are creating a negative loop that is actually what your slump is. Your slump is a negative mental loop. Now, it's not just mental, your physical is attached. Okay, so on a side note here, dividing physical and mental is incorrect. The only reason that we do that is to make sense of it and to categorize it. There is no separating mental and physical. They are one and the same. It's like having a car without the driver. If we're talking about performance here, a car is worthless without someone driving it, right? So our body needs a driver. Our mind is the driver. Without the driver, you cannot control it. Take a car that's sitting in a showroom, nobody in it. Okay, great, cool to look at. That's about it. But now let's say you put a driver in the seat, a professional driver, like a NASCAR driver. Now all of a sudden the potential of that car, what it can do, goes through the roof because it has a mind. It has someone behind the wheel. Okay, so our bodies are the same way. What good is our body without our mind? You cannot separate the two. Okay, so in this loop, how you think affects how you feel, act, and then how the result that you get reinforces the original thought. So here's an example. I suck right now. I can't hit this guy. Thought, okay? Feeling, tight, tense, nervous, anxious, butterflies in the belly. Action, bad swings, bad at-bats, okay? Results, not good, bad results, okay? Bad results reinforces your original thought. It all started with the thought, I suck, and it ended with an out or a bad at-bat, and then now that reinforces the thought. And you're like, see, I suck. And so every time you complete this loop, you give it speed. It becomes the snowball effect. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So this loop can go faster and faster and faster. So fast that you are unable to do anything about it. And then what happens? You square up a ball. You hit a ball in the gap or a homer or whatever, and all of a sudden, that loop is snapped. Why? You started thinking differently. You responded differently to that, getting that hit. That changed how you felt. Because you started thinking differently, you started feeling different. Because you started feeling different, which would be more loose, relaxed, you let the pressure off. Now your at-bats, your swings and your at-bats get better. When your swings and at-bats get better, you start getting better results. Now all of a sudden, you create more of like a confidence loop. There's no negative thought to reinforce. If anything, you could say, well, man, I'm the best hitter in the world right now. And then you walk up and you feel like you're the best hitter in the world. Then you take good swings and have good at-bats like you're the best hitter in the world. Then you get much better results, right? And then now all of a sudden, those results reinforce that original thought. I'm the best hitter in the world. Yeah, I must be. Right? And now you've created a new loop, and now you can go on your tear. So now you're in the summer, right? Slumps, we're in the cold, we're in the winter, dead of the winter. Okay? The slump is a psychological and physiological loop that we get stuck in, almost like a current pulling us under. So thinking, feeling, acting, and then reinforcing the original thought is what can get us into our own loop. Okay, how do we snap this loop? Once we recognize we are in a negative loop, right? A think, feel, act, reinforcement loop, we need to be able to snap it. Okay, so once you recognize it, snap it, take a deep breath to just stand back from the loop. Separate yourself from the loop. Observe the loop happening. Okay? Now, we can replace a thought. We can control the next thought. Something to think about. We can control how we carry our body, right? Then we can start to control and we can focus on our process. So thinking, thought, or verbal cue to get you to again create a new cycle, a new loop. Feeling, acting. So for example, I want to snap out of a slump. I'm in that loop right now. Okay, how do I snap out of it? Step back, take a deep breath. Okay, maybe just, I can hit this guy, get a good pitch, put a good swing on it. Okay, now I'm going to carry my body. I'm going to pull my shoulders back, my body, change my body language. Walk up to the plate like I own that plate. And like, I'm going to hit this dude. If he gives me a pitch, I'm all over this thing, right? Almost like a Juan Soto. You know, you can only imagine that, like, all the antics that Juan Soto has is probably similar to kind of what he's thinking in his mind. It's like, ooh, I'm all over it. Ooh, that was a good pitch. Ooh, that was close. You better not make a mistake on the next one. Ooh, I fouled that one off. You better not give me that again. I'm gonna get it. Right. So those kind of thoughts keep you in a more aggressive, a more assertive and aggressive mindset that's going to give you a better chance to put better swings on pitches, make better decisions, and therefore get better results, right? And then those results can just keep flowing back through that confidence loop, okay? Now, again, this is easier said than done, but this is kind of like, and I'm no expert, I'm no psychologist, but all the books and the study and all the things that I do, like this is kind of like basic psychology and like physiology, and how we think affects how we feel. You know, another example of this would be like in school. If you've ever had, like, most people are deathly afraid of public speaking. And I can totally agree with this. Like, I can talk into the camera and talk into the microphone, but, you know, to be in front of an audience is a big difference. But anyways, so if I'm going to talk in front of an audience or a classroom of people about some topic that, you know, I don't really care about, I'm going to be nervous. Like, I don't care how much I'm prepared. I'm going to be so nervous. I'm going to be thinking about fumbling my words. I'm going to be thinking about, oh, what if they laugh at me? Oh, what if they're like, all these different thoughts are going to go through my mind. And you know what happens? What happens to your stomach? You almost feel sick to your stomach. You can actually make yourself sick through thought. Some people will actually be so nervous that they'll throw up. Me personally, that has not happened. I've felt it at times, but it's never happened. But it can absolutely happen. You can think yourself into being sick. Okay, that is 100% evidence that your mind affects your body, and how your body is feeling in that moment is going to determine how your actions and what you do from there on out. So understand the loop. Think, feel, act, reinforce, right? If you complete the loop in a negative scenario, in a slumping mindset, then you're just going to keep that slump going. That's why slumps continue on sometimes far longer than they need to. Another aspect of this is that your slump, you're focused on yourself, which brings me to my last tip, is change your vocabulary, change how you're talking. Because when you talk about slumping, you're talking about yourself. Remove slump from your vocabulary. Use slump, now that slumps, quote unquote, is just the winter. And the winter is here. The winter is coming for everyone, no matter what. So it's, what will you do to prepare for the winter? What will you do then? You see, for me, in my playing days, I would just simply let winter would take me by storm. Pun intended. How's it going? It would hit me, would blindside me. And then it was like I was surprised that it ever happened. That's ridiculous. That's insanity. We can't let that happen. So let's recap on why we slump, okay, and how to snap out of it. Okay, understanding the law of large numbers, right? Over time, like don't focus too much on the small sample sizes. Even if you're like hot, you're hitting like 800 in your first 10, you go 8 for 10. That's not going to last either. That's going to go down. And then you got to be okay with the fact that your numbers are going to start to even back out the more you accumulate at bats. And then vice versa. If you're 0 for 10, you're going to go up. They're going to get hits. But if you focus on the fact that you're hitting 0 on the year, you're going to be in trouble and you're putting yourself in a slump. Okay. Slumps are self-induced. Second one was understanding the seasons and accepting them as fact. The seasons will come, right? We got spring, summer, fall, winter. Okay. There's the least amount of time in there is summer. You are going to be hot the least. Okay. Accept it as fact and you'll be better off. Now the think, feel, act loop. Recognize the loop. Your thoughts, your feelings, actions, and the reinforcement. Think negative. I can't hit this guy. Feel tense, nervous equals bad at bats, bad swings, bad results, right? Which reinforces the original thought that I suck. And you're like, see, yeah, I suck. I can't hit this guy. See? And then it just gets worse and worse and worse as the loop goes. It picks up steam. It goes faster and faster, and the thoughts become more and more powerful until it seems like it's the end of the world. And we are in this slump, and we suck, and we question ourselves. We doubt ourselves. We think, why are we even playing baseball? I've been there. I know exactly what you or your kid, whoever's watching this or listening to this, I've been in all of these scenarios and probably to more extreme than most people. Like I said, my highs were so incredibly high, but my lows were so incredibly low. It gives me quite a broad range of insight here, okay? I know how you feel. And then, of course, how to snap that loop. We got to step back, separate yourself from the loop, take a deep breath, insert a new thought. It'll create a new feeling. Carry your body differently, okay? You can control those two things. That's going to help your swings and your at-bats improve. That's going to help your results. And then it's going to feed back through the loop, creating a new positive loop of confidence. And that will help you. It won't guarantee results. It won't guarantee you'll jump right into summer. That's not the point. But what you're going to do is you're going to start competing at a higher level, even when you are not performing your best. And remembering that this is a team game. When you're not performing, someone else is going to pick you up. The whole idea of slumping is selfish. You're thinking about yourself, as you should. There's a right amount of selfishness. But let's use this to our advantage. When we are struggling, let's try to shift our focus away from ourselves and put it out on our team. That will help take the pressure off of you, therefore allowing you to control the next thought, control how you feel, how you carry your body, and therefore improve your swings and improve your at-bats, which will improve your results, which will complete the loop and get you back on track. And to help you with the process of how to create a new loop, I created a free guide, a 3-step release routine that is going to help you do just that. It was created by Dr. Ken Ravizza, author of Heads Up Baseball 2.0. I highly recommend you check that out. I'll leave a link to it in the description below. Break it down step by step, how to create that new loop and how to get you dialed back in. So if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll leave a link in the description below and you can download that guide. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, you can go to ferrantebaseball.net/free guide. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed the episode. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Lets me know that you're enjoying this content and that you want to see more like it.